All right, what's up, guys? It's Zach here, and we are going to talk about bio and sonic geometry today. This is a wonderful talk. This is some cool shit. You guys are going to love it, and I'm going to blow your mind with some math and some shit. You're going to understand how energy, frequency, and vibration are all aligned neurally and through music and through the sound and the stars. So this is going to be really, really cool. So what is biogeometry? Biogeometry is an environmental science that uses specifically calibrated tools to measure, amplify, and recreate the sonic energy qualities of power spots, and introduces this harmonizing and healing qualities and design principles, proportions, and angles to create healthy environments. So basically, biogeometry is creating a healthy environment using the resonance of architecture. Does that make sense? Ancient civilizations used biogeometry in the design and architecture of the religious, educational, and governmental structures, right? So our schools, our churches, and different things were designed according to the biogeometry of the town and the city that you are located in. So now let's start to understand how sound works so we can then design a space that has those healing qualities. So sound is the universal language. So we know that sound is frequencies or vibrations that resonate at a given pitch, but who came up with the increment of time by which those vibrations were counted? You know, where did the 1 second come from, and why is the length of time that it is? Who created the notes that we use to create music, and why were they placed at the frequencies they are? Why is everything set to where it is? Why do we have music set like we do? Why is A tuned to A? Why is B tuned to B? Why do we have these different frequencies? Mathematics, geometry, energy, and frequency are the universal constructs of a language that not only makes it possible to communicate between races from different places in the universe, but also communication across time and between all those who inhabit it and its creator. Sound is constructed from these four things. Basically saying sound is the way we can connect with God, our creator, and the universe itself and the physical world. It is the translator between the two. And you have to fully understand mathematics, geometry, energy, and frequency to fully understand the universe. And if you want to fully understand the universe, you have to absorb and surround yourself in this knowledge. And this is knowledge that you don't get taught just anywhere. You have to seek this for yourself. So we start first in ancient Sumeria with the base 60 counting system. The first known counting system that we can find in history was called the base 60, and it was introduced in ancient Sumeria. It was documented in ancient Sumeria. This is where we get the 60 seconds to a minute and 60 minutes to an hour, right? This is where we get the first real construct of time keeping, where we are actually using numbers to keep order of something. So now we need to look at the stars and the sun and the earth and how it moves. And this is how they were able to determine the different counting systems they were able to use. That base 60 comes from the precession of the equinox. Now we're going to do the math. Now listen. There is a small wobble of the earth known as the precession of the equinox. It takes 25,920 years to complete. It is the wobble that is unique to Earth itself. It is referred to as the Great Year, which is divided into 12 months, each consisting of 2,160 Earth years. This turns out to be the key to unlocking the mystery of our counting system. 12 months, there are 12 notes in the scale too. Remember that. In the musical scale, there were 12 notes. An equally profound formula that has accompanied this counting system, which the system itself was probably either given to us by aliens, I think it was given to us by God, and it was used to calculate many things. It is F equals 1 over T. Frequency is equal to one particular something divided by the number time. Okay, F equals 1 over T. This is a very profound formula, and you're going to see how profound this simple formula is. By using this formula in the most basic way, let's make the number for it T time the most logical choice, which is 60. Then let's take the longest cycle on our planet, the Great Year, as the frequency and see what happens when we solve the formula. We take 25,920 divided by 60, we get 432. Now, 432 hertz is very important. I want you to keep that number in your mind throughout the rest of this talk, 432. Our answer to that formula comes to 432 cycles per second. This number 432 is also 2160 divided by 5, right? Our moon measures 2160 miles in diameter. 2,160 miles in diameter our moon is measured. Frequency can be calculated from the graph here, and we can see how the F equals 1 over time is used to calculate the compressions and rarefactions inside the waveform. Now, we'll talk about that here in a minute, what compressions and rarefactions are. But you can see how that and the period and amplitude can be determined from this graph as well. It's also interesting to note that if you take 0 off of 2,160 so that it becomes 216, that's exactly half of 432. There again, the number 432, it's half of that number. Now we're going to talk about the properties of sound. This is going to talk about the compressions and rarefactions that I just referred to in the waveform. Sound is the result of the movement of air molecules as they collide with one another in space. Any element that produces sound emits a pressure wave. These waves can both be audible and inaudible. As waves move in space, the high-pressure waves, compressions, move quickly into the air molecules, thereby creating a low-pressure zone, rarefactions, in which the air molecules rush back in to fill the void, creating another high-pressure zone, another compression, and the cycle continues to repeat itself. Compression, rarefaction, compression, rarefaction. These pressures are picked up by your inner ear, and your brain processes that information into sound. The little ear hairs inside your ears pick up these differences in air pressure, and they turn that into sound inside the brain. These compressions and rarefactions can be graphed by a pressure over time, or more commonly known as a waveform, right? So this is how you would calculate a waveform using trigonometry. We're not going to really get too much into the trigonometry. Y equals A to sine to 2 to pi to frequency of X, all right? And if you want to add plus the phase shift there, you can. Sound propagates in all directions like an expanding sphere. It travels at approximately 300 milliseconds in all directions through air without any medium. The medium changes the speed of sound. Water. I don't know what other medium you could be in, but any other mediums you could be in will change the sound, the speed of sound. Metal, if you're listening to sound inside of metal, it will change the speed at which the sound travels down the metal. Also, the temperature, the air quality, and the wind affect the speed and the direction of sound in an environment. So every single environment is unique to its own sound properties. Here you can see us graphing those sinusoidal waves over time. I talk a little bit more here. You can see I have a little bit more here about the trigonometry. If you want to find out more about that, go ahead and use the QR code that I'm going to give you at the end here and go onto the electronic document on my website, and you can dive deeper into this. Now we're going to talk about Pythagoras and harmonic fifths. Okay? This is important. Now we're going to start talking about frequencies and their harmonics, right? Pythagoras knew a lot about harmonics, and he used the celestial bodies and the planets to come up with the mathematics that we use for our musical harmonics. It's really cool. He used space to create math that we now have the math to prove that he was right. We now have the tools to be able to measure these planetary bodies, and he got it right. That's what makes bio and sonic geometry so sacred, is that it is naturally within us and can be manifested and pulled out deep from within. So when Pythagoras saw that when a string was plucked, it created a pitch based on its length, and when the string was shortened to half its length, the pitch doubled. This resulted in his eventually coming up with the tunings based on harmonic fifths. So what are harmonic fifths? It's pretty simple. Harmonic fifths come from dividing the length of the string in half by 3, 4, and so on. See, when you pluck the string, you hear the fundamental tone of the string, but you also hear the smaller sounds from the string that come from each of these higher frequency multiplication of the string's length. This is the physics of anything which vibrates. Ironically, everything vibrates. There is nothing in the universe that doesn't vibrate at a specific frequency. Here we can see the different modes of a vibrating string. First loop, the second loop, the third loop, the fourth loop, etc., right? You can see how the first harmonic of the string is tuned to middle C, and then the frequencies F2, F3, all the way up correspond to the notes shown up above in that chart there. Now we're going to talk about the 432 musical grid. So again, we're looking at that 432 hertz. Remember that, 432. The end result of Pythagoras' tuning system is built on 432 hertz, also known as the fourth octave A on the piano. Recently, astronomers at Stanford University found the fundamental of our sun to be 144 hertz. The second overtone of the third harmonic of this fundamental pitch is 432. Second overtone, third harmonic. 432. The Earth is the third harmonic of the sun. We're the third planet from the sun. Remember that. Second overtone. Here again, we can see the fifth, the sixth, the fifth, the fourth, the fifth, the third, the fourth, the second, the third, the first, and the second, and then the fundamental frequencies. You can see how each and every frequency is a harmonic above. So you begin to see that the musical notes were inexplicably linked to the astronomy, and that is which to determine the increment of time that we use to measure frequency or pitch. We can be pretty sure that Pythagoras didn't have the correct ability to measure the frequency of the sun, yet he came up with the correct core frequency for tuning because it is paralleled across so many things. Like I said before, he used the celestial bodies to come up with the tunings that we use in our music, and he compared that and aligned it to when you pluck a string. Okay? He's now connecting the universe with something physical on the planet. Below is the resulting grid that Pythagoras used to create the musical notes that we have used since. Some have referred to this as the factor 9 grid, since each number in the chart is an increment of 9. This mathematical grid that all music was based on from Pythagoras' time. This is what the mathematical grid from all time has been used. And in the 1930s, it was changed to a 440 hertz grid. It was changed by the Rockefellers. Believe it or not, the Rockefeller family changed it to 444 hertz. And none of these geometric shapes and these frequencies are actually represented in this new chart. The new standard of tuning for music changed in the 1930s. Remember that. Around the same time in the Great Depression, when everybody's mental shift changed. Remember that. This is the grid that determined how musical notes are defined, where every note in each octave is exactly separated by a factor of 9 hertz. Every number on this chart can be considered sacred since it comes from the mathematics of the universe and is anything but randomly selected frequencies. It is not surprising that humans are drawn to music. Now let's talk about the sound of a triangle. We can make sound into shapes. Did you know that simple geometric shapes have sound? They do. You simply convert degrees to cycles per second or hertz. So a basic triangle has 3 sides. Each side is a 60-degree angle, so you simply add up all your 3 angles and you get 180 degrees, or the frequency of 180 hertz. The sound of a triangle is a pure tone of 180 hertz. See, that 60 is the base counting system we talked about, and 180 appears on the factor 9 chart. The next geometric shape in this case is a circle and a square, both which total 360 degrees, or a pure tone of 360 hertz. It turns out that all geometry, whether it's 2 or 3-dimensional, is derived from the base 60 mathematics. All of these numbers can be found on that 432 chart, that factor 9 chart. Remember that each of these shapes, when the total angles are summed, always equals a sound that represents only that specific geometric shape. So if we continue, a pentagon has 5 sides whose angles add up together to 540 hertz. The hexagon 720, the 7-sided heptagon 900, and the 8-sided octagon at 1080. Platonic solids. From these basic shapes, there are 4 Platonic solids that form the 3-dimensional elemental building blocks of life. They are the tetrahedron, made up of 4 triangles whose summed angles total 720 hertz, or F sharp. Then there is the cube, whose sum squares equals 2160, or C sharp. I want you to remember F sharp, C sharp. Those 2 notes are very important when talking about the Platonic solids here. I want you to remember those two things for the building blocks of life. The third of the four Platonic solids is an octahedron constructed of 8 triangles. This totals up to 1440 hertz, which is another perfect F sharp in the scale. And finally, the icosahedron is made up of 20 triangles and is an F or an E sharp. So now that you're seeing how geometry is frequency based, let's look at what happens when you recreate the 6 circles known as the seed of life, referred to and repeatedly in the sacred geometry of antiquity. The seed of life. If you start with one circle, which is 360 degrees, and then you add a second circle, you have 720 hertz. Adding a third brings you to 1080 hertz, the harmonic fifth of C sharp. 4 circles brings you to 1440, another F sharp, and 5 circles totals 1800, and finally the 6th circle brings us to 2160 hertz. What all this has in common is that we have 2-dimensional geometry, 3-dimensional geometry, and even sacred geometry all being perfectly represented by an F sharp major chord based on the factor 9 grid of 432 hertz. It's important to note that the 432 factor 9 musical grid has all of the geometric shapes of nature shown in the previous illustrations. Again, it's important to understand that when it was changed in the 1930s, not one of these shapes are represented. Remember that 2160 hertz was the frequency of both the sacred geometry's germ of life we just described, but also of a cube. Notice that without the 0, it's exactly half of our magic number, 432 or 216. 2160 divided by 2 is 1080. The angle sum of an octagon. 2160 divided by 3 is 720. The angle sum of a hexagon. 2160 divided by 4 is 540. The angle sum of a pentagon. And by 5 is the key tone of 432 hertz. Divided by 6, 2160 equals the angle sum of 360, which is the angle sum of the square in the circle. Our sun is 864,000 miles across. Incredibly, our moon's base number sequence is exactly half of 432, while our sun's number sequence is exactly twice 432. There are 6,400 seconds in a day, which is 43,200 seconds in 12 hours. If you take the 360 degrees of our sun and moon and multiply it by 12 hours, you would get 4,320. 432 is the only whole number that comes when squared with 0.1% accuracy of the speed of light. For all of this to work and be completely keyed on that great year, the cycle is not possible for man to have achieved our counting system on his own, and therefore music is divine. Man did not create this system. This system was already in place before we got here. We are now just becoming aware of this system. Now we're going to talk about the frequency and note mapping. We're going to map these notes now in such a way that I can show you the geometric shapes and the building blocks of life. So using our 432 hertz A4 tuning as a reference point, we can then determine the other frequencies of the 12-note scale, C through B, right? And looking at each individual note and frequency, we recognize a mathematical pattern within each individual frequency. The sum of the digits of each individual frequency in the scale is equal to 9, which is also the sum of the digits of 432. 4 plus 3 plus 2 equals 9. As you can see, every single frequency adds up to 9. We can also map each frequency by evenly spacing them around a circle starting from the center. A circle is equal to 360 degrees. 3 plus 6 plus 0 equals 9. Once mapped, we can then connect each individual frequency within its chord triangle. A triangle is equal to 180 degrees. 1 plus 8 plus 0 is equal to 9. Again, 9. By doubling each frequency's position around the circle, perpetual motion is observed at positions 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, and 5. Right? 1 plus 1 equals 2. 2 plus 2 equals 4. 4 plus 4 equals 8, and so on. Right? Positions 3 and 6 create their own perpetual motion. Positions 9 creates its own perpetual motion. And position 0 creates its own perpetual motion. 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, and 5 operate independently. 3 and 6 operate independently. 9 operates independently. And 0 operates independently. Here we can see how we can map those propagations in 3D over time. We can map these numbers in 2D. Those 2D maps forms the 3D skin of a torus. And starting from the center, we can achieve a shape mappable to the Earth, the magnetic fields and the vortices in and out of the Earth. Now we're going to map these local, neural, and spatial frequencies. We're going to map these frequencies to the brain itself. The left and right brain both constantly resonate at different frequencies. These frequencies can be detectable up to 15 feet away from the brain's location. In conversation or interaction, we can split the left and right brain into two processes. Left informational and the right contextual. The brain emits in all directions but focuses these frequencies in the forward direction. Around 7.5 feet, half of 15, we find the center of the understanding zone. In the UZ, informational and contextual frequencies cross paths as they travel towards the receiver. Starting from 0 and using the same mathematical processes presented earlier, we can map 1 through 11 around the circle with 9 directly atop a center. Here we can see perpetual motion at 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, and 5. Understanding the relationship between neuropolarity and sonic geometry. This is very important, this picture right here. This is going to show you how we can align the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit mathematically, neurally, and musically, and geometry all into one singular understanding. Take a good second and pay attention to this chart right here. This has the knowledge of the universe built right into it, and it is manifested straight from the mind. Now, in practice, biogeometry is used to study and influence the flow of energy in around those architectural spaces. We're going to use these knowledges and this understanding of manifestation in the environment and its resonant structures to design our architecture in order to amplify and create a healthy environment based off of those vibrations. The architect is a sculptor of space itself. The architect's main goal is the achievement of harmony between all of the components that make up the quality of space. They are a sculptor of space. This is a forming process involved to give the space the necessary qualities. A space that supports life must in itself have the criteria of life. The goal of the forming process is to create a living space. All forms of life, animate and inanimate, including human beings, are open energy systems on all levels. There are many levels of energy involved: physical, vitality, emotional, mental, and other more subtle levels. They are just different frequency ranges, and in this respect are also governed by the laws of harmonics, such as resonance, which produces the information exchange. Since the space around us has all those levels of abstract collective energy qualities, then it is actually alive in an abstract collective way. The environment around us is living and breathing just like you. If it has an emotional and mental energy, then it has a personality, it is conscious, it exchanges information, it has a memory, and it is conscious again, and so on. What is abstract and collective to us is actually a hierarchy of individual levels of living personalities within the total personality of Earth. The Earth is an actual living being. In architecture, we are interacting with the personality levels of the space we are forming. We are interacting with the Earth, its living being. The language of biogeometry. The sun is a major source of energy which life depends on. It gives off both vertical electric and horizontal magnetic waves. Negative green energy. The angle at which the sun's rays hit the Earth varies according to the position of the Earth's rotation. This produces different energy qualities across the spectrum, just like light passing through a prism creates different colors. Negative green energy is the opposite of green energy. At sunrise, we observe violet and UV energy qualities, and at sunset, we observe red and IR energy qualities. As mentioned before, civilizations thousands of years ago understood this knowledge. During the rule of the Roman Empire, Catholicism was widely accepted as the common religion. Observing the architecture and design of the church and the presence of the single or multiple steeples, we can observe these harmonic resonances. Negative green energy is represented in architecture. Here we can see the different steeples and things and how they channel the energy. The energy key. The energy key has 4 qualities: EQ1, 2, 3, and 4. EQ3 on the right and EQ4 on the left. This upward and downward movement creates a torus. And if we apply this key, we can see the biogeometric energy grids represented all around us, even in our own modern cities and towns. Looking at the small Northern California town of Marysville, we can observe biometric resonance in the design of its architecture. In 1842, Marysville was established as a trading post by Theodore Cordua and when land leased from Captain John Sutter. By 1850, it was recognized as a city, and the designing process began. In 1852, the Archbishop of San Francisco sent Peter to Marysville to set up a church. And on September 16, 1855, the first cornerstone of the St. Joseph Catholic Church was laid. And then taking our biogeometric knowledge of the fact that Roman Catholic religion used these practices in its architecture, we can see that the steeple's design creates an energy key in Marysville. We can see an upward EQ and downward EQ spiral and their linear paths, and the steeple, which create perfect harmonic resonant energy alignments with the 3 peaks of the Sutter Buttes, sending the energy quality through the buildings, down both C and D streets, collecting at the Bacchae Temple at the south, and collecting at the Catholic Cemetery at the north, where another energy key is created within its structures. If we follow that energy pattern from the steeple down 7th and 8th westward, we find the energy passes through the Covalot Education Area. On the west, we find the government building. To the east, we find the energy passes through the sheriff's office and the police department headed south. Following the steeple energy north down C and D, we find the Catholic Cemetery, where another energy key is created. Its energy flow heads eastward down 19th and Rideout. Towards western into 19th and Rideout, we find the energy flows through Marysville High School. And as we head eastward, it also passes through Kynoch and McKinney. Looking at this entire picture, we can see how the religious, educational, and government structures were designed according to the biogeometry of the surrounding environments. We can see how the harmonic architecture has designed where we put our religious and educational buildings.